April 22, 1956. Soviet soldiers patrolling the outskirts of East Berlin notice something unusual. The ground is unusually warm near a warehouse in the Alt-Glienicke district. It's been raining for 3 days straight, and the mud should be cold. But here, 6 feet of soil radiates heat like a furnace is buried beneath. They dig. Shovels bite into the clay. 6 feet down, they strike metal. A steel door. Industrial hinges. American manufacturing stamp still visible on the bolts. Behind it, 450 meters of tunnel, 600 telephone taps, banks of recording equipment, and 11 months of recorded conversations between Soviet military commanders discussing everything from troop movements to weekend leave schedules. The Central Intelligence Agency calls it their greatest intelligence triumph of the Cold War. British MI6 considers it a masterpiece of technical espionage. Western newspapers will soon celebrate it as proof that democratic ingenuity can penetrate communist secrecy. But what they don't know, what they won't know for 5 more years, is that the KGB has been watching from the very beginning. Every shovel of dirt, every bolt turned, every tape recorder activated. Because in London, on an autumn afternoon in 1953, a British intelligence officer named George Blake walked into a phone booth on a quiet street. He dialed a number that connected to the Soviet embassy. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. And in that moment, Operation Gold became something entirely different than what the Americans intended. Moscow received Blake's message and faced an extraordinary choice. They could expose the tunnel immediately, arrest the engineers, humiliate American intelligence, score a propaganda victory that would echo through the Cold War, or they could let it happen. Let the Americans dig. Let them tap the lines. Let them record 500,000 conversations, all to protect a source so valuable that his intelligence was worth more than anything the tunnel could reveal. Moscow chose to let them dig. And what happened next became one of the most sophisticated counterintelligence operations in history. Berlin, 1953. The city is more than divided. It's dissected. Soviet troops occupy the eastern sector with 350,000 soldiers within 50 miles of the city center. American, British, and French forces control the west with less than half that number. Through the middle runs an invisible line that divides not just a city, but 2 economic systems, 2 political philosophies, 2 visions of humanity's future. For Western intelligence agencies, this division creates an impossible operational problem. The Soviet military operates from Karlshorst, their sprawling headquarters complex in East Berlin. From there, they command forces across Eastern Europe. From there, Moscow controls satellite governments in Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and East Germany. And American intelligence is almost completely blind to their communications. Radio transmissions can be intercepted, but the Soviets encrypt everything important with one-time pads, codes that are mathematically unbreakable. Agents can be recruited, but the KGB's counterintelligence apparatus is ruthless and effective. Every Western spy network in Eastern Europe has been penetrated, rolled up, or turned against its handlers. But underneath Berlin runs something the Soviets cannot easily protect: a network of telephone cables. Underground landlines buried 6 feet beneath the surface, running from Karlshorst to switching stations throughout East Berlin and beyond. Cables that carry every conversation between Soviet commanders in Germany and their superiors in Moscow. Military logistics, personnel evaluations, equipment status reports. The routine communications that collectively reveal the true capabilities of Soviet forces. And these cables, the Americans believe, could be tapped. The idea originates not in Berlin, but in Washington. In the winter of 1953, a small group of CIA technical specialists begin studying Soviet communications infrastructure in East Germany. They know where the major cable routes run. They know Soviet security procedures focus on above-ground threats, wiretaps on telephone poles, compromised switching equipment, intercepted radio signals. What the Soviets don't expect is someone tunneling under their territory to reach the cables from below. The audacity of the plan is staggering. Dig a tunnel 450 meters into hostile territory. Intercept cables carrying classified military communications. Operate recording equipment 24 hours a day. And do all of this without detection in a city where KGB counterintelligence teams monitor every unusual activity. It's the kind of operation that should be impossible. But in 1953, with the Cold War intensifying and intelligence gaps growing, impossible is becoming necessary. The operation falls to three men whose backgrounds read like a spy novel. William King Harvey, CIA's chief of base in Berlin, age 44, former FBI special agent who left J. Edgar Hoover's bureau after a falling out over operational methods. Harvey is brilliant, paranoid, and drinks too much. He carries a pistol even to staff meetings. His colleagues call him the Pear behind his back because of his distinctive physique. But Harvey has run successful operations in Vienna and Rome, and he believes the tunnel isn't just possible, it's essential. Harvey understands something his superiors in Washington sometimes forget. Intelligence work is about small advantages accumulated over time. The tunnel won't reveal Soviet war plans. It won't expose secret weapons programs, but it will provide thousands of small details that, assembled correctly, reveal patterns, logistics capabilities, command relationships, the bureaucratic reality of how the Soviet military actually functions versus how it appears on organizational charts. Frank Rowlett, the cryptologist assigned to assess whether Soviet communications are worth the risk. Age 46. Rowlett had broken Japanese diplomatic codes before Pearl Harbor, though his warnings went unheeded. During World War II, he was part of the team that cracked the Japanese PURPLE cipher machine. Rowlett knows better than anyone that the most valuable intelligence often comes from routine communications rather than high-level secrets. When Rowlett examines Soviet cable traffic, he identifies the opportunity. Soviet officers in Germany don't encrypt telephone conversations. The encryption equipment is cumbersome, requiring code books and time-consuming procedures. For routine military communications, logistics, personnel matters, equipment status, they use plain speech on landlines, assuming physical security is sufficient. They're wrong, and Rowlett intends to prove it. Carl Nelson, the Army Corps of Engineers specialist tasked with designing a tunnel that can be constructed in complete silence beneath a city where Soviet patrols monitor the border constantly. Nelson has built military infrastructure across Europe, but never anything like this. The tunnel must descend 6 feet from the surface, travel 450 meters horizontally beneath enemy territory, and rise to precisely intercept cables buried beneath Schonefelder Chaussee, a road inside East Berlin. The margin for error is 0. 6 inches too deep, and the tunnel floods from groundwater. 6 inches too shallow, and they break through the surface in the middle of Soviet-controlled territory. 6 inches left or right, and they miss the cables entirely. Nelson studies geological surveys of Berlin. The ground is clay mixed with sand, structurally sound but prone to collapse without proper support. Water tables fluctuate with seasonal rainfall, and any construction noise could alert East German border guards positioned less than a quarter-mile away. He designs a prefabricated steel tunnel, assembled in sections, lined with sandbags to muffle sound. It will work. It has to. But there is another player in this game, one the Americans don't know about yet, one who will transform Operation Gold from an intelligence triumph into something far more complex. George Blake, born George Behar in Rotterdam, November 11, 1922. His father was a Sephardic Jew who had fought for the British in World War I. His mother was Dutch Protestant. Blake grew up speaking Dutch, English, French, and German. During World War II, as a teenager, he worked for the Dutch resistance, helping Allied pilots escape Nazi-occupied territory. After the war, Blake joined British intelligence, the secret intelligence service known as MI6. He was perfect for espionage work, multilingual, culturally adaptable, ideologically committed to Western democracy. MI6 sent him to Hamburg to run operations against Soviet targets, then to Korea in 1950, where he was captured when North Korean forces overran Seoul. Blake spent 3 years in a North Korean prison camp. The conditions were brutal. Inadequate food, no heat during winter, psychological pressure designed to break Western prisoners. Communist political officers conducted daily indoctrination sessions, explaining Marxist theory, critiquing Western capitalism, promising a better world under Soviet-style communism. For most prisoners, these sessions were endurance tests, ideological noise to be ignored. But Blake listened. He later claimed that reading Marx and Lenin in that prison camp convinced him that the West was perpetuating injustice while the Soviet Union represented humanity's best hope for equality and progress. Whether Blake's conversion was genuine ideological transformation or psychological breakdown under captivity remains debated. But when he returned to London in 1953, Blake returned as a committed Soviet agent. MI6 welcomed him back as a hero, a British officer who had survived communist captivity without breaking. They assigned him to a critical position, liaison officer coordinating British and American intelligence operations in Berlin. Blake now had access to everything: operation plans, agent identities, technical specifications, budget allocations. And because Allied intelligence agencies trusted each other, sometimes too much, Blake sat in meetings where Americans and British planned their most sensitive operations, including a tunnel. October 1953. George Blake attends a planning meeting at MI6 headquarters. American CIA officers present the tunnel concept, the engineering challenges, the intelligence potential, the operational timeline, 6 months until construction begins. Blake takes notes. He asks clarifying questions about technical details. He appears engaged, professional, appropriately skeptical about the risks. 2 days later, on a gray October afternoon, Blake walks through London. He stops at a phone booth on a quiet residential street. He checks for surveillance, a habit from his training, now used to protect his Soviet handlers rather than British operations. Satisfied he's alone, he dials a number that connects to the Soviet embassy. The conversation is brief. Blake speaks in Russian, using a prearranged code. The message is clear. The Americans are planning to tunnel into East Berlin to tap Soviet military communications. Construction begins in approximately 6 months. The tunnel will run from the Rudow district of West Berlin to Schönefelder Chaussee in the east. Target: telephone cables serving Karlshorst headquarters. The embassy officer receiving Blake's call doesn't ask questions. He takes notes. He thanks Blake using a code name the British will not learn for 8 more years. The call ends. Within hours, Blake's message is encrypted and transmitted to Moscow Center, KGB headquarters. It arrives on the desk of General Ivan Serov, chairman of the Committee for State Security. And Serov faces a decision that will define one of the Cold War's most sophisticated intelligence operations. General Ivan Serov is not a man prone to panic. He had overseen Stalin's deportations in the Baltic states. He had commanded NKVD operations during World War II. By 1953, he is one of the most powerful intelligence officials in the Soviet Union. But Blake's message presents an unprecedented problem. The KGB could expose the tunnel immediately. Alert East German border guards to watch for unusual construction in Rudow. Wait for the Americans to begin digging, then arrest everyone involved. Parade the captured CIA officers in front of international media. Claim a propaganda victory that demonstrates Soviet vigilance and American aggression. The political value would be enormous. Proof of Western espionage. Evidence to show non-aligned nations that America conducts illegal operations even in peacetime. Justification for increased security measures throughout the Eastern Bloc. But doing so reveals something far more valuable. The KGB has a source inside British intelligence. A source with access to joint Anglo-American operations. A source who can provide advance warning of Western espionage activities. Serov consults with his senior counterintelligence officers. They review Blake's intelligence history. Since returning from Korea and being placed in the Berlin liaison position, Blake has provided remarkably valuable information. Agent identities, operation plans, intelligence assessments. He is, by any measure, one of the KGB's most productive sources inside Western intelligence. And he is still climbing the MI6 career ladder. In 5 years, 10 years, Blake could reach senior leadership positions. Access to strategic intelligence planning. Insight into NATO operations. The potential is extraordinary. The question becomes, is 11 months of American eavesdropping on Soviet military communications worth sacrificing that potential? Serov's counterintelligence specialists conduct an assessment. What can the Americans actually learn from tapped telephone lines? The answer is reassuring. Soviet commanders in Germany discuss routine military matters on regular phone lines, logistics, personnel, equipment maintenance. Nothing strategically sensitive. truly classified communications, war plans, nuclear weapons deployment, intelligence operations, travel through different channels, encrypted cables, courier-delivered documents, face-to-face briefings. The Americans will intercept thousands of conversations. They will hear Soviet officers complaining about equipment shortages, requesting leave approvals, coordinating training schedules. Valuable tactical intelligence, perhaps, but nothing that threatens Soviet strategic interests. Meanwhile, Blake can continue providing intelligence that does threaten Western operations, agent networks, technical capabilities, future operation plans. Serov makes his decision. The tunnel will proceed. Soviet officers will continue using the tapped phone lines, and Blake will remain hidden, free to provide intelligence that the KGB considers far more valuable than anything the Americans might learn. But Serov adds one critical instruction. Soviet communications will be managed. Officers in Karlshorst will be informed privately that their lines may be compromised. They will avoid discussing anything genuinely sensitive, and KGB analysts will study what the Americans choose to focus on, learning about CIA intelligence priorities by watching what questions they ask. Moscow sends word to East Berlin through secure channels. Let the Americans dig. Let them listen. Protect the source, and turn their operation into ours. February 1954. In the Rudow district of West Berlin, less than 300 meters from the Soviet sector boundary, construction begins on what appears to be a new military radar station. The site is unremarkable, a flat parcel of land surrounded by light industrial buildings and vacant lots, the kind of place where military construction attracts no particular attention. A warehouse rises quickly, prefabricated metal panels bolted to a concrete foundation. Trucks arrive daily delivering equipment crates marked with U.S. Army serial numbers. Armed guards patrol the perimeter, but that's standard for American military installations in Berlin. To anyone watching, and the KGB is certainly watching, it looks like routine infrastructure development. But beneath the warehouse, American and British engineers are digging. Carl Nelson's final tunnel design is a masterpiece of covert engineering. The shaft descends 6 feet from the warehouse floor. Then the tunnel runs horizontally, following a precisely calculated route beneath the sector boundary, staying 6 feet below surface level for 450 meters until it reaches the target coordinates beneath Schonefelder Chaussee. The tunnel is exactly 6 feet in diameter, large enough for engineers to work standing slightly hunched, small enough to minimize excavation volume. The walls are lined with prefabricated steel panels, each section weighing 200 pounds, bolted together to form a continuous cylinder. The floor is packed gravel covered with wooden planks. The ceiling is reinforced every 3 meters with steel ribs to prevent collapse. Every detail is calculated for stealth. The steel panels are wrapped in sandbags to absorb sound. The wheels on the mining cars that transport excavated soil are rubberized to prevent metal-on-metal squealing. The ventilation system uses baffled fans that move air without creating detectable noise at the surface. But the engineering challenge that nearly defeats them is disposal. 400 cubic meters of displaced soil cannot simply disappear. In a normal construction project, dump trucks would haul dirt away. But unusual truck traffic would alert Soviet surveillance teams monitoring activity near the sector boundary. Instead, every bucket of excavated clay stays inside the warehouse. Basement excavation provides the cover story, supposedly digging foundations for heavy radar equipment. By the time tunnel construction finishes 8 months later, the warehouse basement holds a mountain of Berlin clay packed 20 feet deep. The warehouse floor must be reinforced to support the weight. Structural engineers calculate load distribution to prevent the building from settling visibly. It is, in some ways, more complex than building the tunnel itself. The work proceeds in 8-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Teams of 6 engineers per shift. 2 digging, 2 removing soil, 2 installing steel panels. The clay is dense and stable, good for tunneling, bad for digging. Every meter of progress requires hours of careful excavation. Too much force, and the noise carries to the surface. Too little, and the schedule falls behind. 40 meters from the entrance, they hit unexpected groundwater, a pocket of saturated clay that threatens to flood the tunnel. Engineers install emergency pumps and waterproof the steel panels with rubberized sealant. The water is diverted into the warehouse drainage system, disguised as rainwater runoff from the roof. 80 meters in, they discover their route passes directly beneath a East German police patrol path. For 2 weeks, digging stops during daylight hours when patrols are most frequent. Night shift engineers work in complete silence, communicating with hand signals, removing excavated clay one bucket at a time. At 120 meters, they pass beneath the sector boundary. They are now technically inside Soviet-controlled territory. If discovered, there is no diplomatic immunity. East German authorities could claim the engineers are spies conducting illegal operations. The political consequences would be severe, but they are not discovered. And the tunnel advances. Navigation is the critical challenge. Underground without GPS or even reliable compasses, the steel panels interfere with magnetic readings. Engineers rely on careful surveying. Every 10 meters, they stop to verify direction using theodolite equipment. Angular measurements are taken from the entrance shaft. Calculations are double-checked. Deviation of even 2 degrees over 450 meters means missing the target cables by dozens of meters. The surveyors maintain accuracy within 6 inches over the entire route. It is, for 1954 technology, an extraordinary achievement. October 28, 1954. After 8 months of digging, the tunnel reaches 450 meters. According to calculations, they are now directly beneath Schonefelder Chaussee. Somewhere 6 feet above them, buried beneath the road surface, are the telephone cables connecting Karlshorst to the rest of the Soviet communications network. But they cannot simply dig straight up. Breaking through the surface in the middle of an East Berlin street would expose the entire operation. Instead, engineers excavate a small chamber at the tunnel's end, a vertical shaft just wide enough for one person to work. The ascent begins. Inch by inch, engineers excavate upward. They use hand tools only, no power equipment that might create detectable vibration. Soil is removed in small batches, passed down the tunnel in buckets, added to the mountain in the warehouse basement. They reach 1 foot depth, 2 feet, 3 feet. At 4 feet, instruments detect electromagnetic signals. The cables are close. At 5 feet depth, they find them. 3 major cable bundles, each containing hundreds of individual circuits. Telephone lines connecting Soviet military headquarters to switching stations throughout East Germany and into the Soviet Union beyond. What happens next requires technical precision that pushes 1954 technology to its limits. The cables cannot be cut. Any interruption in service triggers automatic alarms at Soviet switching stations. East German repair crews would respond within hours, discovering the tunnel immediately. Instead, engineers install induction coils, devices that wrap around cables without breaking them, capturing electromagnetic signals through the cable's insulation. Each coil must be positioned precisely. Too close, and it induces detectable interference. Too far, and signal quality is insufficient for recording. 600 individual circuits, 600 separate taps. Each one must be installed, tested, and connected to recording equipment in the warehouse, all without creating any interruption in Soviet telephone service. The installation takes 3 weeks. Engineers work in the cramped cable chamber, hunched in a space barely large enough to turn around. They install amplifiers to boost signal strength for the 450-meter cable run back to the warehouse. They waterproof every connection to prevent corrosion. They test each tap individually to verify signal quality. And on November 18, 1954, they activate the system. 600 Soviet telephone circuits are now feeding audio to American recording equipment. Operation Gold is operational. The warehouse recording facility is unlike anything attempted before in intelligence work. Banks of Ampex tape recorders, newly invented technology adapted for continuous operation. 40 recorders running simultaneously, each capturing between 12 and 24 separate conversations. The reels turn 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every 6 hours, technicians change the tapes. Used reels are boxed, labeled with date and circuit numbers, and flown to London and Washington for analysis. Fresh reels are installed. The recorders never stop. The technical challenges are endless. Tape recorder technology in 1954 is fragile. Motors overheat. Tape breaks. Mechanical failures are constant. The facility employs full-time technicians whose only job is maintaining the recorders, replacing components, keeping the system operational. In London and Washington, the tapes arrive at special analysis centers. CIA has recruited 50 Russian-speaking translators. MI6 has another 30. These analysts work in secure facilities, listening to hours of Soviet military communications, transcribing conversations, flagging anything of potential intelligence value. It is tedious work. Most conversations are mundane. A Soviet logistics officer requesting vehicle repairs, a personnel officer processing leave requests, commanders discussing training schedules, the routine bureaucratic communications of a military organization. But collectively, these routine conversations reveal extraordinary detail. Analysts learn the names of Soviet officers, their command relationships, their communication patterns, equipment inventories, training proficiency, logistical bottlenecks. The thousands of small details that, assembled over months, create a comprehensive picture of Soviet military capabilities in East Germany. The intelligence reports flow upward. Weekly summaries to CIA leadership, monthly strategic assessments to the Pentagon, comprehensive reports to NATO commanders showing Soviet force dispositions, equipment status, operational readiness. From Washington's perspective, Operation Gold is providing unprecedented insight into Soviet military operations. 11 months of continuous surveillance, 500,000 recorded conversations, intelligence that confirms some assumptions, contradicts others, and fills gaps that have existed since the beginning of the Cold War. But what they don't know, what they cannot know because George Blake's betrayal remains undiscovered, is that the KGB is orchestrating a performance. Meanwhile, 450 meters from the tunnel's endpoint, Soviet officers in Karlshorst headquarters continue their daily routines with one critical difference. They know the Americans are listening. The knowledge creates a strange operational dynamic. Soviet commanders cannot simply stop using their telephones. That would alert American intelligence that something has changed. Instead, they continue making calls, discussing military business, maintaining the illusion of routine communications. But the conversations are managed. Senior officers receive private briefings from KGB counterintelligence. The message is clear. Telephone communications may be compromised. Do not discuss classified operations. Do not mention agent networks. Do not reference weapons systems or strategic plans. Continue routine military communications, logistics, personnel, training. But assume hostile intelligence is recording everything. For Soviet officers, it becomes a balancing act. They must provide enough genuine information to make the American intelligence appear valuable. Equipment shortages are discussed, but not critical vulnerabilities. Personnel issues are mentioned, but not morale problems that might suggest weakness. Training exercises are coordinated, but not operational exercises that reveal actual military capabilities. The result is intelligence that is technically accurate but strategically misleading. The Americans hear real Soviet officers discussing real military matters. But the conversations reveal capability problems the Soviets want them to know about while concealing the capabilities they want to hide. And the KGB is learning something equally valuable. They're discovering what American intelligence finds interesting. KGB analysts in Moscow receive reports from Karlshorst detailing which topics generate follow-up American intelligence activity. When Soviet officers discuss a particular equipment issue, does CIA request additional surveillance of related facilities? When a personnel matter is mentioned, do Western agents attempt to recruit the officer involved? By watching American responses to the information they're being fed, the KGB gains insight into CIA intelligence priorities. What questions is American intelligence trying to answer? What gaps are they trying to fill? What capabilities are they most concerned about? In essence, the tunnel becomes a two-way intelligence operation. The Americans learn about Soviet military logistics and bureaucracy. The Soviets learn about American intelligence methodology and strategic concerns. But this delicate operation cannot continue indefinitely. Moscow knows the tunnel will eventually be discovered, either through accident or because protecting Blake becomes less important than claiming a propaganda victory. The KGB's challenge is timing the discovery too soon, and they waste an opportunity to study American intelligence priorities. Too late, and questions might be raised about why Soviet security failed to detect such an elaborate operation. In April 1956, after 11 months of operation, Moscow decides the moment has come. April 21st, 1956. Soviet Army Sergeant Alexei Kulikov is conducting a routine patrol inspection of telephone equipment in the Alt-Glienicke district of East Berlin. It's been raining for 3 days, cold spring rain that turns unpaved areas into mud. Kulikov is checking junction boxes along Schonefelder Chaussee, looking for water damage to cable connections. Standard maintenance work. He's performed this inspection dozens of times, but tonight, something is different. Near a particular junction box, the ground feels warm beneath his boots. Not slightly warm, noticeably warmer than the surrounding mud, as if heat is radiating from beneath the surface. Kulikov calls his superior officer. Within an hour, a team of Soviet engineers arrives with digging equipment. They begin excavating around the junction box, following the source of the heat. 6 feet down, their shovels strike metal. Not a pipe, not a cable. A steel door with hinges and a handle. A door that opens onto a tunnel running westward toward the American sector. The engineers force the door open. Beyond it stretches a steel-lined tunnel, illuminated by electric lights, ventilation fans humming steadily. The heat Kulikov detected is waste from the ventilation system, pumped continuously for 11 months, finally detectable because of unusual weather conditions and a lucky observation. Soviet security forces seal both ends of the tunnel. Engineers document everything: the construction quality, the recording equipment, the elaborate tap system on their communications cables. Hundreds of photographs are taken, measurements recorded, evidence collected. By dawn on April 22nd, senior KGB officers from Berlin and Moscow are walking through the tunnel, examining what they have officially just discovered. They express appropriate shock at the scale of American espionage. They order comprehensive security reviews, they prepare for the propaganda response, and they protect George Blake. Because officially, this is a stunning Soviet counterintelligence success. A vigilant patrol discovered an elaborate American operation. Soviet security proved effective. The narrative is ready. April 23rd, 1956. 2 days after the discovery, the Soviet Union invites Western journalists into the tunnel. Cameras from multiple nations document the CIA's elaborate operation. The steel-lined passage stretching into West Berlin, the banks of recording equipment, the 600 taps on Soviet communications cables, the sophistication of American espionage operations. Soviet officials conduct a carefully orchestrated tour. They point out the tunnel's starting point in the American sector. They demonstrate how the taps were installed. They emphasize the violation of East German sovereignty, the illegal nature of the operation, the aggressive character of American intelligence activities. The story runs in newspapers worldwide. CIA spy tunnel discovered in Berlin. Elaborate American espionage operation exposed. Soviets uncover underground listening post. The photographs are spectacular. A real-life spy tunnel, exactly the kind of Cold War intrigue that captivates public imagination. Western governments respond with carefully worded statements. They neither confirm nor deny the operation. They deflect questions about legality. And privately, CIA leadership faces uncomfortable inquiries from congressional oversight committees about operational security. Inside CIA, the immediate question is, how was the tunnel discovered? William Harvey, the operations architect, conducts an internal damage assessment. He interviews the engineering team. He reviews security procedures. He analyzes the timeline looking for suspicious Soviet behavior that might indicate prior knowledge. The official Soviet explanation is plausible. A routine patrol during unusual weather conditions detected the heat signature from the ventilation system. It's the kind of operational accident that ends even the best intelligence operations. Bad luck combined with good Soviet security procedures. CIA's internal investigation finds no evidence of compromise, no security breaches, no unusual Soviet communications behavior that might suggest they knew about the tunnel before April 1956. No indication that any team member was a security risk. The conclusion, documented in classified after-action reports, is clear. Operation Gold was successful for 11 months and ended due to accidental discovery. A remarkable technical achievement that simply ran its natural course, the kind of outcome that, in intelligence work, is considered success. The reports are filed, the operation is closed, and nobody suspects the truth. George Blake continues his career at MI6. He is promoted, given more responsibility, assigned to more sensitive operations. His performance reviews describe him as dedicated, thorough, security conscious, a model intelligence officer. For 5 more years, Blake provides intelligence to the Soviet Union. He reveals agent identities. Western sources operating in Soviet territory are arrested, imprisoned, some executed. He compromises operations. CIA and MI6 activities in Eastern Europe are systematically rolled up. He exposes technical capabilities. The Soviets learn which surveillance technologies Western intelligence possesses and develop countermeasures. Then, in 1960, a Polish intelligence officer named Michael Goleniewski defects to the West. Goleniewski brings with him evidence of Soviet penetration of Western intelligence services. His information is fragmentary, code names, operational details, timeline references. But it's enough to launch investigations. One of Goleniewski's leads points to a Soviet source inside British intelligence, someone with access to Berlin operations in the early 1950s, someone still active. MI6 counterintelligence begins a careful investigation. They review personnel files. They analyze who had access to specific compromised operations. They look for patterns, connections, anything that might identify the mole. The evidence slowly accumulates, and it points to George Blake. April 4, 1961, exactly 5 years after the tunnel's discovery, MI6 counterintelligence officers summon Blake to a meeting at the Carlton Gardens safe house in London. It's presented as a routine debriefing about past operations. But when Blake arrives, he faces not colleagues but interrogators. They present evidence. They ask questions Blake cannot adequately answer. They press for explanations about meetings, phone calls, inconsistencies in his operational reports. Blake, understanding his situation is hopeless, confesses. Not immediately, not completely. But over several hours of interrogation, he admits to espionage. He confirms he provided intelligence to the Soviet Union. He reveals the scope of his betrayal, and he acknowledges Operation Gold. Yes, he informed Moscow about the tunnel. Yes, the KGB knew from the beginning. Yes, the discovery in April 1956 was staged. Blake is arrested, charged with 5 counts of espionage under the Official Secrets Act. The trial, held in secret for national security reasons, lasts only 3 days. The evidence is overwhelming. Blake pleads guilty. On May 3, 1961, the judge sentences Blake to 42 years in prison, 1 year for each agent Blake is estimated to have betrayed. It is, at the time, the longest sentence ever imposed by a British court for espionage. For CIA and MI6, Blake's confession forces a comprehensive reassessment of Operation Gold. Everything they believed about the tunnel's success must be reconsidered. The intelligence they gathered, the conclusions they drew, the strategic assessments they based on 11 months of Soviet communications. If the KGB knew about the tunnel from the beginning, how much of what they heard was genuine intelligence versus managed deception? October 22, 1966. After serving only 5 years of his 42-year sentence, George Blake escapes from Wormwood Scrubb's maximum security prison in London. Using a rope ladder thrown over the wall by accomplices, later revealed to be British citizens sympathetic to Blake's political beliefs, he climbs to freedom. Blake makes his way across Europe using forged documents and safe houses arranged by Soviet intelligence. By January 1967, he arrives in Moscow. The KGB welcomes him with a state apartment, a generous pension, and official recognition as a hero of the Soviet Union. Blake lives in Moscow for the rest of his life. He gives occasional interviews to Western journalists, defending his actions as ideological conviction rather than betrayal. In these interviews, he discusses Operation Gold openly. Blake confirms the KGB knew from the beginning. He explains their reasoning. Protecting him was more valuable than stopping the tunnel. He describes the managed performance Soviet officers conducted, providing routine communications while concealing anything genuinely sensitive. And he addresses the question that haunts intelligence historians. Did Operation Gold produce any genuine intelligence value despite Soviet knowledge? Blake's answer is nuanced. Yes, he says, the Americans learned real information. Soviet officers could not completely control every conversation. Bureaucratic communications revealed organizational inefficiencies. Personnel discussions exposed morale issues. Logistical conversations confirmed equipment problems. But strategically, the intelligence was less valuable than CIA believed. Nothing the Americans learned from the tunnel changed their assessment of Soviet military capabilities in fundamental ways. Nothing revealed secrets Moscow was determined to protect. Today, the Berlin tunnel site is marked with a memorial plaque. A section of the original tunnel is preserved at the Allied Museum in Berlin. Visitors can walk through the steel-lined passage, see the recording equipment, understand the extraordinary engineering achievement. But the full story, the story of Blake's betrayal, the KGB's counterintelligence operation, the managed performance that turned American espionage into Soviet intelligence gathering, that story remains complex, ambiguous, resistant to simple conclusions. Was Operation Gold a success? The CIA built an extraordinary tunnel. They intercepted 500,000 conversations. They demonstrated technical capabilities that impressed even their adversaries. By those measures, yes, it was successful. But the KGB protected a source who compromised Western operations for 9 years. They controlled what information the Americans received. They studied CIA intelligence priorities by watching what the Americans found interesting. And they achieved a propaganda victory when the tunnel was discovered. Both sides won. Both sides lost. In the murky world of intelligence work, Operation Gold became exactly what it always was. A game where everyone plays, everyone keeps score differently, and nobody completely wins. The question that remains is not whether Operation Gold succeeded. The question is, who was really listening? And what did they learn that the other side never intended to reveal? In intelligence work, sometimes the most important secrets are not the ones you discover, but the ones you never knew you gave away.